So it's May 4th and I wanted to do something special for Star Wars Day. I was thinking of maybe reviewing one of the Star Wars movie or kicking off like a weekly review of Star Wars. But I decided to watch the movies in this Machete order. So there's going to be major spoilers in this video. So if you haven't seen any of the Star Wars movies, don't watch this. And if you haven't seen the Star Wars movies, what's wrong with you? Usually when I go back and I watch Star Wars, I used to watch it in release order, or I watch it in chronological order. But then I sort of stumbled upon this thing called Machete order. Viewing Star Wars in this order is kind of hard for hardcore fans like me. I've seen these things so many times, so it's kind of hard for me to put myself in the mindset of viewing Star Wars for the first time, but I did my best with it. And even though I've seen the movie so many times, viewing it like this, it did change the experience for me a little bit. You start with 4 or 5, then you jump back to 2 and 3, and then you finish off the viewing with episode 6. You're saying, wait a minute, where's episode 1? The movie fails on so many levels, so you might as well just skip it anyways. But I'll get into bigger details on why you skip it completely. When you view Star Wars in this order, you sort of treat episode 2 and 3 as a flashback. And another thing that viewing it this way does is there's no awkward age gap between Anakin and Padme. You ever feel awkward when their romance starts happening? When Padme sees Anakin for the first time, she says her line of, "Anakin will always be that little boy I knew on Tatooine." And you never see Anakin as a little boy, so you kind of get this feeling that they're old childhood friends and they know each other from their past. And without that awkward age gap between them, their romance seems a little less forced. I mean, it's still forced, but it's a little bit more believable that these two can fall in love. And also Obi Wan's character. Obi Wan stays the same character the entire time, because you get introduced to him in episode 4, and then he appears in episode 5, and then you jump back to episode 2, and he's still this Jedi with a beard. So his character really doesn't change. By viewing it in this order, the whole saga becomes a story about a father and son. You follow Luke, and you want to know more about his father, and at the right moment too, because when Darth Vader reveals that he's Luke's father, you get to jump back and find out how he became Darth Vader. In viewing it this way, you get 2 twists, but in both storylines, because the first one you find out is, of course, Darth Vader is Luke's father. The other twist is that Luke and Leia are twins and they're brother and sister. That twist never hit me as hard as, the bigger twist, but by viewing it this way, in episode 5, when Luke leaves Dagobah, Obi-Wan says, "Oh, that boy's our last hope," but Yoda's like, "No, there's another." And then you jump back, and then Luke gets born first. Padme's naming it, and she goes, "Oh, Luke." And then the second child gets born, and it's a girl. And then Padme says, "Leia." Learning the twist that way, it makes that twist a lot bigger and a lot heavier than it would have been by revealing it in Return of the Jedi. When you jump back and you watch episode 3, and Padme's last words are, she's basically saying that they're still good in Anakin. If you watch it in the original way, you go from Empire to Return, Darth Vader is just this evil asshole that's just killing people left and right. So you're kind of not believing it. By watching episode 3 before episode 6, somebody that was so close to him kind of felt the two, that there is still good in him. And then having Luke repeat those words, it makes you believe more that Anakin Skywalker is still somewhere in Darth Vader and there is still good in him. And it's more possible for him to come back from the dark side. If you watch it the original way, when in Return of the Jedi, when Yoda is speaking to Luke on his deathbed, and he's saying that don't underestimate the powers of the Emperor. When you watch Revenge of the Sith before Return of the Jedi, you get to see Yoda fail at trying to bring down the Emperor. You can get that by watching it in chronological order, but by watching it in Machete order, it's still fresh in your head that Yoda has already fought the Emperor. One of the reasons the original trilogy worked for me so much is it had this roller coaster of emotions when you watched it. The prequel trilogy really didn't do that, but by watching this in Machete order, you get that back and forth with, you start with episode 4, you end on a positive note, then you go to episode 5, you end on a darker note with Empire, and then you go back to episode 2, it sort of ends on a high note, but not really. Then you go to episode 3, it ends on a really dark note, and then you conclude everything with episode 6, which is ultimately the Empire falling, and that's a really positive note for you. So you get this really big roller coaster of emotions. I never got to experience the cliffhanger of Empire Strikes Back. I was born in '85, so I didn't get to experience the cliffhanger that was waiting for Return of the Jedi to come out after I viewed Empire Strikes Back. But by watching Star Wars in Machete order, you kind of get that cliffhanger a bit more, because you watch 4 or 5, but then you're forced to wait by sitting through 2 and 3. No matter how much I dislike episode 1, it's still part of the Star Wars universe. It's official canon. You know, if you ever introduce somebody to Star Wars and you watch it this way, they don't have to sit through episode 1. And if they want to watch episode 1 after this, they can treat episode 1 as sort of like an origin story, because it does feel like an origin story. Watching the Machete order isn't perfect. I mean, there are still some things that are confusing, and by leaving episode 1 out, you do lose a couple of things, like 2 really great characters in my opinion. You leave out Qui-Gon Jinn. You're also losing one of the most wasted potential characters in Darth Maul. Say what you will about episode 1, one of the coolest parts about that movie is the lightsaber battle. Some people think it's too choreographed and too flashy. I really enjoyed it. That's one of the reasons I watched that movie 12 times in theaters. Episode 2 and 3 still have their flaws. It's not going to change the movies themselves, but what it does is it changes your experience. And when leaving episode 1 out, you're still, again, you're losing a couple of things. Like, there's this whole thing about the prophecy with Anakin Skywalker, and you're kind of a little confused. And there's other things like that too. In episode 2, the Viceroy of the Trade Federation is trying to kill Padme, and you don't get an explanation for that. And then when you conclude in episode 6, Leia's talking about how she remembers her mother. Padme dies right after giving childbirth to them. So how does Leia have all these memories of Padme and Luke doesn't? So the biggest thing I got from watching the movies in this order is, if you have somebody who has never seen Star Wars, 1, why are you friends with them? And 2, you should have them view it in this order, because you get really good story arcs and you experience the saga in a different way. I've seen these movies countless numbers of times, and even someone like me got something new out of watching movies in this order. So I would highly recommend at least giving this order a try. So if you've tried this Machete order, leave a comment below and tell me what your thoughts are. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and if you like this, you can click right here and see more videos by Andrew. Happy Star Wars Day guys!